তুমি কৃপা করি সদা বিন্দু দিয়া দেহ কৃষ্ণ নাম দানে। তুমি কৃপা করি সদা বিন্দু দিয়া দেহ কৃষ্ণ নাম দানে। কৃষ্ণ সে তোমার কৃষ্ণ দিতে পারো তোমার শক্তি আছে। তোমার কৃষ্ণ দিতে পারো তোমার শক্তি আছে। আমি তো কঙ্গাল কৃষ্ণ কৃষ্ণ বলি যাই তব পাছে পাছে।
আমি তো কঙ্গাল কৃষ্ণ কৃষ্ণ বলি যাই তব পাছে পাছে।
ওহে বৈষ্ণব ঠাকুর দয়ার সাগর এই দাসে করুণা করি।
ওহে বৈষ্ণব ঠাকুর দয়ার সাগর এই দাসে করুণা করি।
দিয়া পদ চায়া শোধ হে আমায়া তোমার চরণ দরে। দিয়া পদ চায়া শোধ হে আমায়া তোমার চরণ দরে। জয় বেগদমি জয় দোষ শোধি জয় গুণ দেহ দাসে। জয় সৎসঙ্গ দেহ হে আমারে বসেছি সঙ্গের আসে। একাকী আমার নাই পায় বল হরিনাম সংকীর্তনে। তুমি কৃপা করি সদা বিন্দু দিয়া হে কৃষ্ণ নাম দানে।
তুমি কৃপা করে সদা বিন্দু দিয়া দেহ কৃষ্ণ
তুমি কৃপা করি সদা বিন্দু দিয়া হে কৃষ্ণ নাম দানে। কৃষ্ণ সে তোমার কৃষ্ণ দিতে পার তোমার শক্তি আছে। আমি তো কঙ্গাল কৃষ্ণ কৃষ্ণ বলি তাই তব পাছে পাছে। ওহে বৈষ্ণব ঠাকুর দয়ার সাগর এই দাসে করুণা করি।
বৈষ্ণব ঠাকুর
Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate
Om Namo Bhagavate
Vasudevaya.
Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devam Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Udirayet. Nasta Prayastu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavati Sevaya Bhagavati Utamashloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtaki. Ready? 2-9-11.
More back. 2-1.
9-11.
Louder for the
2-9-11. The cosmic manifestation answers by citing the Lord's version. Text 11. Shamavadata Shatapatra Lochana. Shamavadata Shatapatra Lochana.
Shamavadata Satapatra Lochana.
Pishanga Vastra Surucha Supeshasa.
Pishanga Vastra Surucha Supeshasaha.
Sarve Chaturbhava Unmishan Marni.
Sarve Chaturbhava Unmishanmani.
Praveka Nishka Bharana Suvarchasa.
Praveka Nishka Bharana Suvarchasa.
Shamavadata Shatapatra Lochana.
Shamavadata Satapatra Lochana.
Pishanga Vastra Surucha Supeshasa.
Pishanga Vastra Surucha Supeshasaha.
Sarve Chaturbhava Unmishan Mani.
Sarve Chaturbhava Unmishanmani.
Praveka Nishka Bharana Suvarchasa.
Praveka Nishka Bharana Suvarchasaha.
Okay, devotees, please chant.
Shama Vadata Satapatra Lochana.
Shyama Vadata Shatapatra Lochana.
Shanga Vastra Surucha Supeshasaha.
Pishanga Vastra Sucha Supeshaha.
Sarve Chaturbhava Unmishanmani.
Sarve Chaturbhava Unmishan Mani.
Praveka Nishka Bharana Suvarchasaha.
Praveka Nishka Bharana Suvarchasa. Shama, sky bluish.
Sky blue.
Avadata,
Avadata.
glowing. Shatapatra,
Satapatra.
lotus flower.
Lotus flower.
Lochana,
Lochana.
eyes.
Eyes.
Pishanga,
Pishanga.
yellowish.
Yellowish.
Vastra,
Vastra.
clothing.
Clothing.
Suruchaha,
Suruchaha.
greatly attractive.
Greatly attractive.
Supeshasaha,
Supeshasaha.
growing youthful.
Growing youthful.
Sarve,
Sarve.
all of them.
Oh.
Chatu,
Chatu.
4.
4.
Bahavaha,
Bahava.
hands. Unmishan,
Unmishan.
rising luster.
Rising luster.
Mani,
Money.
pearls.
Pearls.
Praveka,
Praveka.
superior quality.
Superior quality.
Nishka Abharanaha,
Nishka Abharana.
ornamental medallions.
Ornamental medallion.
Suvarchasaha,
Suvarchasaha.
effulgent. Translation. The inhabitants of the Vaikuntha planets are described as having a glowish, sky bluish complexion. Their eyes resemble lotus flowers, their dress is of yellowish color, and their body features very attractive. They are just the age of growing youths, and they all have 4 hands that are nicely decorated with pearl necklaces with ornamental medallions, and they all appear to be effulgent. Purport: the inhabitants of Vaikuntha are all personalities with spiritual bodies, features not to be found in the material world. We can find the description in the revealed scriptures like Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. Impersonal descriptions of transcendence in the scriptures indicate that the bodily features of Vaikuntha Loka are never to be seen in any part of the universe. As there are different bodily features in different places of a particular planet, or as there are different bodily features between bodies in different planets, Similarly, the bodily features of the inhabitants of Vaikuntha Loka are completely different from those in the material universe. For example, the 4 hands are distinct from the 2 hands in this world. Om Ajnana Timirandasya Gnanjana Shalakaya Chakshurumilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Shtapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yata Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagarjatam Sagana Raghunatham Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagat Pate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurāṅgi Radhe Vrindavraneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Divya Dvindaranya Kalpajumada Śrīmad Ratnagarasto Śrīmad Radha Shila Govinda Devo Prashtalavi Sevimano Smarami Manja Kalpaturubhischa Kripasanubhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktavrinda Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangum Langayate Garim Yat Kripatamaham Vande Shri Gurum Dinataranam Shamavadata Shatapatra Ochana Peshangavastra Surucha Supeshasa Sarve Chaturbahava Unmishan Mani Paveka Nishka Bharana Suvarchasa. The inhabitants of the Vaikuntha planets are described as having a glowing sky bluish complexion. Their eyes resemble lotus flowers, their dress is of a yellowish color, and their bodily features are very attractive. They are just the age of growing youths. They all have 4 hands. They are all nicely decorated with pearl necklaces, with ornamental medallions, and they all appear to be effulgent. So Lord Brahma went into long time, 1,000 years of the celestial demigods into extreme penance and austerity and meditation and trying to become self-realized. And after doing this, Krishna was pleased with them. And it's described in the Brahma Samhita that Krishna played his flute, and by playing his flute, it sounded the Gayatri mantra, which then opened a portal into the spiritual world, and Lord Brahma had full darshan, and he composed verses such as Chintamani Pakara Sadmasu Kalpa Vriksha Laksha Vartesha Surabir Abhipali Antam Lakshmi Sahasra Satam Sambrahma Sevyamanam Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami. And it was fully realized knowledge because he was actually experiencing it. And part of this, now he's able to see Vaikuntha. So realizing Vrindavan means also realizing Vaikuntha, because if you realize something worth $1,000, you also realize all the $100 realizations and so on and so forth. So he's realizing also Vaikuntha and seeing the Vaikuntha Vasis, which all have Sarupya Mukti, which means they've all got the same form as Lord Narayan. Which at some point I would think, wouldn't that be boring? What, everyone just looks like Narayan, and the only way you can tell the difference is like a little hair. But actually, it's described in the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam that they can, because they have all the mystic powers, they can easily, everyone can shapeshift and become unique if they want, like unique looking. And when Gopakumara comes to one of the Vaikuntha Lokas, he sees many that are like four-handing, look like Narayan, very beautiful. He like confuses them for Narayan for a second, and is like swooning, and then he realizes that they're not. And but then he sees many others like taking the shapes of animals, taking the shapes of Kimaras or demigods and demons, taking the shapes of like Kim Purusha, which like Kim means like almost. So it's like there's different like living entities in the universe where they like look like people, but then they might have like a head of like Lord Nrsimhadev. He like looks like a person, but he has like a head of a lion. He's got like nails like a lion. Or like Garuda, he's kind of like a person, but he's got like the body of a bird. So they're like Ki means like. So it's like a person, but it's like somewhat mixed. And like that, there's a lot of different varieties in the universe. And people that are just subscribing to Darwin's, stupid theory, and think that on this life, on this earth, there's just all that life is. They're going to be very surprised if science actually makes any discoveries. But we don't really need to wait for science because we have the transcendental technology of Sri Guru Parampara, so we can actually know about these things, well before they're actually discovered, or even if they're ever going to be discovered, who knows? We can still be firm and confident. So Prabhupada says in the purport that you never see these people in any part of the universe. And it's sometimes like the impersonal translation will be like, they don't exist in this universe. So they'll take as like it's just a negation of everything in this universe, and that's what God and realizing God means. When you realize God and you become like a Vaikunthavasi, then that means you've become nothing like anything in the universe, means you've become nothing. But taking away the non-essential doesn't mean taking away the essential. The Vaikunthavadis are a completely positive realization of something, not just a negation of all the negative qualities in this material world. And it's not possible to attain that just by mere speculation, by mere gyan. You have to actually perform devotional service. And so today's really special day is Ayendra Prabhu's appearance day, and it's Govinda Ghosh. It's Sri Govinda Ghosh's disappearance day. And they're both, very, like, they're both people that you'll never find in this, in the universe, in the material universe. Govinda Ghosh is described as Govinda, Madhava, and Vasudev were the three gopis in Vraj named Kalavati, Rasolasa, and Gunatunga, who used to sing the songs composed by Vishaka. That's in Gaur Ganodesha Deepika. So they didn't come from the material world. Govinda Ghosh didn't come from the material world. And Ayendra Prabhu, it's maybe people want to debate or not, but he definitely went back to the material world, or to the spiritual world, and regained his full Krishna consciousness at the time of his passing. So the qualities you see in devotees at such a caliber, you won't really find in any other kind of people. And on their different days, it's actually very important to remember them, and it's offensive not to remember them, because that's kind of like, that's the whole point of Krishna consciousness, is to associate with these devotees, and their association is still there. Like if you don't read Prabhupada's books, he spent so much time making them, it's kind of offensive to him. And so if we let year by year go by and we forget about these devotees, then we're missing a big opportunity that they've mercifully existed in this material world for us to be able to get their good example. So I'm just going to read from gaudiyahistory.iskandesiretree.com. It's a really nice article about Govinda Ghosh, and there's a bhajan he wrote, and it's also very nice. I don't know how to sing it, but I'm just going to read it. It shows one of the bhajans that he wrote. It's a really nice bhajan. Oh, yeah, we'll get to that. Madhava Ghosh devoted himself to kirtan. There was no singer on earth who was his equal. It was said that he was the singer from Vrindavan, most dear to Nityananda Prabhu. Him and his two brothers, Madhava and Vasudev, sang while Lord Nityananda danced. This is from the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Nityananda Prabhu danced to the kirtan of the three brothers, Govinda, Madhava, and Vasudev. Srila Govinda Ghosh Thakur is most known for his sweet kirtans at the annual Rath Yatra festival celebrated by Lord Chaitanya at Jagannath Puri. Govinda Ghosh participated in Srivas Angram in Mahaprabhu's his secret kirtans. He also was in the Nagar Sankirtan to the Qazi's house and in the house of Raghava Pandit. I don't know, do you know what happened in the house of Raghava Pandit? What is that?
No, I don't know that.
And during the Rath Yatra, he was the lead singer in the fourth group, accompanied by Junior Haridas, Vishnudas, and Raghava Pandit. Vikreshwar Pandit was the principal dancer in his group, which I guess Vikreshwar was one of the most stupendous dancers, because he could dance for like 3 days straight without stopping. So I guess Lord Chaitanya gave him Govinda Ghosh as the strong singer to support that. He was born in a Kyasta family, and his main house was in Agra Dweep, like Bipin was telling us. He was instrumental in installing a deity, Sri Gopinath, in Agra Dweep. And Govinda he actually accompanied Lord Chaitanya when Lord Chaitanya left Jagannath Puri to go to Vrindavan as his servant. And you can read in the Chaitanya Charitamrita in the purports, and here it's telling us that there's a fruit called haritaki. It's actually one of the fruits in Triphala. It really helps with digestion and freshening the mouth. And so Lord Chaitanya would ask for it after his meal. Sometimes Lord Chaitanya would eat a heavy meal and need something to freshen his mouth and help everything digest. So Govinda rushed to the village, he collected some and gave it to him. And he actually collected like more. So the next day Lord Chaitanya asked, Govinda didn't need to run to the village, he just gave him. Lord Chaitanya, what is this? You're collecting, you've not been able to get up the habit of saving things. Better that you stay back here in this village, get married, and take care of the deity. And Govinda followed it and stayed at Agra Dweep, and now apparently Bipin saying they're having a 5-day Mahotsava festival there, because the day is Govinda's disappearance day. So having a big festival. But he felt miserable to have been left behind by Lord Chaitanya. Prabhupada explains in the purport, it's not necessary for a Vaishnava to keep a stock of food for the next day. He should receive only sufficient grain to last 1 day. The next day he must again depend on the Lord's mercy. This is the instruction of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So, we should not materially calculate, thinking, it's better to stock food for a week. Why give the Lord trouble by having him bring food daily? One should be convinced that the Lord will provide daily. There is no need to stock food for the next day. So this is a pretty heavy thing, but if we're actually dependent on the Lord, this kind of thing happens to very serious devotees. I mean, we should understand by hearing this that we're not serious, and then we're very neophyte, and we need to make a lot of advancement, and little things that we have to do in our lives, like store grains and things like that. And it's just a part of our training. When the training wheels come off, we should have faith like this. Who knows what it'll take? Most of the devotees are, as it is, they're not really following what Prabhupada kind of wanted for the devotees, especially considering the Varnashram Dharma level. Prabhupada said 50% of my work is not finished. And practically speaking, in most places, it's still not finished. Maybe it'll take some sort of big catastrophe that then devotees might get it together and try to get out of the system and become self-sufficient. Or who knows what it'll take for each individual person to get to the level where they're like Madhavendra Puri, that they don't want any name or fame or anything, and they can easily just wait and be patient and depend on their meal from Krishna. But mercifully, Prabhupada has also given us the order that we can stay at temples, and that for the needs of the preaching in the public, there can be a big stock of grains, and we can eat up to the neck, 3 times a day, or as many times a day as we want sometimes. So the festival that they're having, also this incident is it's like a pastime between the Lord and his devotees. He wants to establish Krishna consciousness everywhere, Lord Chaitanya. So in general, he likes to send his devotees out and every house become a temple, become a dham, become a center where more people can become Krishna conscious. So Govinda got married and he had a son, but then soon after he had a son and his wife passed away, and he stopped worshiping the deity, and then the deity came to him in a dream, and he said, Govinda, you think when you lose your son, one of your sons, it's proper that you also starve the other son to death? And then Govinda replied, it was my hope that if my son survived, he would be able to perform the Shraddha ceremonies for me and for all the departed ancestors. So what will I get if I actually serve you? And then Gopinath pacified him. He said, okay, I promise that I'll personally help celebrate your death festival, your Tirobhav Mahotsava in a fitting manner forever. So please, can I have some food to eat? So Govinda was happy and pleased with that, so he got his food. So then when Govinda finally passed away, Gopinath held kusha grass in his fingers, and they still do it today to help perform the Shraddha ceremony. And so there's one bhajan, Pranera Mukunda He, Kiaje Shunilu Achambite, Gaeta Parna Jaya Muke Nahi Bahirai. O Mukunda, my life, what did I suddenly hear today? If I say it, I will die. He's writing about, this is a bhajan in the mood of separation of Lord Chaitanya. The words do not want to come out of my mouth. Gaurāṅga is really going to leave Navadvip. We didn't know this, but we saw Gaura this morning. He was sitting with his head bowed in thought. Streams of tears flowed from his eyes and washed over his chest, and his moon-like face had lost its luster. When we saw him like that, our own hearts fluttered, and we could not ask him anything. For a moment, I regained consciousness and humbly asked him the question, and that is what he told me. Becoming disturbed, I ran here to you right away without saying anything further to him. I had told you this, and now you can do what you can. As far as we are concerned, I don't think that we have any hope of continuing to live. When he heard this, Mukunda started to cry. He could no longer keep his calm as he looked at Gadadhar. Govinda Ghosh says, let it not be, for if he leaves, I will die. So this is a very saturated bhajan about Lord Chaitanya that Govinda Ghosh wrote. And like Bipin said, Agradweep is his place of worship. It's a few miles south of Katwa, and it's on the Ganges. And if you go to Mayapur, you can go visit there. It'll only take an hour to get there, maybe a little more, 26 miles. Sometimes going through India is very slow. And today is also Ayendra Prabhu's not disappearance, but appearance day. And we were singing "O Hey Vaishnava Thakur." That bhajan is right now we're actually studying the Nectar of Instruction, and this bhajan is also a summary of the Nectar of Instruction. So he's talking about, the Vaishnavas. So Vaishnavas have so many different good qualities, and what happens when their mercy comes, or when we get the shade, Diya Pada Chaya. Chaya means the shade, and Pada means the feet. So when we get shelter under the feet, what happens? So Chaya Vega Domi. So Chaya means 6, Vega means urges. So that's the first verse of Nectar of Instruction. Vacho Vegam, that's one Vega. Manasa Kroda Vegam, that's 2 more. Jiva Vegam, Udara Pasta Vegam, that's 6. Etan Vegam Yovishaheta Dira Sarvamapimam Purtivim Sashishyat. So who can be the make shishyas of the whole Prativim of everyone, Sarvam Prativim, everyone on earth who can make shishyas is a Vaishnava. A Vaishnava can purify the whole universe. And who is that? Who has actually controlled their those 6 primary urges. Vacho Vegam, what they speak is only Krishna consciousness, never prajalpa. Manasa, their mind is always thinking about Krishna. Krodha, their angers, they don't really get angry, or if they get angry, it's only related to something related with Krishna. Manasa Krodha Veg. Jiva Vegam, their tongue is completely controlled. They're only eating Krishna Prasadam. Udaro Pasta Vegam, they never overeat, and their genitals are only used to beget Krishna conscious children. So in that way, if you take shelter under such a devotee, you can also control the 6 urges. Chaya dosha shodhi. So dosha means imperfection. There's another 6 imperfections. That's the 2nd verse of Nectar Instruction. Atyahara prayasascha prajalpa niyamagraha janasangascha lolyam cha sadbir bhaktir vinyashati. So what destroys bhakti is these 6 faults. And so if you take shelter of a Vaishnava, these faults can get destroyed. That atyahara, collecting more than necessary, like a kind of humorous example in Govinda Ghosha's story, where he had collected 3 haritakis instead of just 1, and Lord Chaitanya chastised him, told him that he should get married. Prayas, over-endeavoring, like we're living in the city of over-endeavor, just to get to work. I used to do work. I had to travel for 3 hours per day just to work. And it's over-endeavor. In actual culture, everything you do is based on just living in the village. You can do everything at your home. Your home is your place of work, or if not, your place of work is in your shed, in the backyard or something like that. You don't have to spend hours and hours commuting. You're just engaged in some simple farming, some simple, cottage industry, something that will help. Maybe you're a blacksmith, maybe you're a carpenter, maybe you're, so many different things. Maybe you're like a judge, or maybe whatever you are, it's something, you can do it very simply in a village setting. You don't need to, fly an hour this way and go just to, at the end of the day, come an hour back to go home in some hellish kind of condition. Prajalpa, everyone knows Prajalpa is bad. Prajalpa niyamagraha, following the rules and regulations, but just following them for the sake of following them, that will create some very dry and fried out feeling. Or becoming a sahaja and deciding that you don't have to follow any rules or regulations, and missing the point, losing the plot. That's also very dangerous. Jana sangas, associating with worldly minded people who have no interest in Krishna consciousness. Like someone, I think Dylan posted, you become like the 5 people you're around the most. Well, every single person that you associate with, which means you have like an intimate interaction with, they're going to affect your consciousness. And so if you give up the association of worldly minded people, which means that you don't let them affect your consciousness, it's just like a one-way street. Like you're going to affect their consciousness, or otherwise there's not going to be a relationship. Then you can help you insulate your heart and your consciousness to only be able to increase in devotion rather than decrease. Because if you associate with worldly minded people, then your association will decrease, or your Krishna consciousness will dry up if you let that affect you. And lolyam, being janasangas cha lolyam cha, being greedy for mundane achievements which are difficult to achieve. I can't think of any specific example right now, but It brings us to the third verse in Chaya Guna Deho Dase. Chaya Guna, there's 6 good qualities. The 6 good qualities are in the third verse of Upadeshamrita. Utsaha Nischaya Dharya Tatat Karma Pavartanat Sangotyagat Satovrite Sadbir Bhakti Prashidyati. So Ayendra Prabhu is a good example of these 6 qualities of a devotee that if you get them, then Bhakti Prasidyati, your devotion will be perfected in a short time. So these are qualities that if we take shelter of the Vaishnavas, if we remember their good qualities and we try to kindle them in ourselves and find them in other devotees and help fan the spark in other devotees, these qualities will help save us and help us be successful in our devotional service. And Utsahan is the first one Rupa Goswami mentions, being enthusiastic. And there's a story when Ayendra Prabhu was just joining the temple, he was really, from right in the beginning, really excited about doing Sankirtan. And there was he had to wait to get some ride, and the ride was driving away, and he was running in his sandals, and one of the sandals fell off, and he jumped into the back. It was like a flatbed truck. And then don't you want to go back and get your sandal? He's like, no, I don't want to miss another second of Sankirtan. I want to get there as soon as possible. So he was so enthusiastic, and he's famous for saying, in Kali Yuga, you got to get fired up, because there's a lot of things going against us. So if we're not fired up for the Sankirtan movement to do service, if we're not enthusiastic, then whatever service we're doing is going to have a very dampened, lessened effect. But even if we don't feel enthusiastic, but we act enthusiastic, then that'll make us do our service good, and doing our service good will actually make us feel enthusiastic. So Prabhupada would often say, fake it till you make it. If you don't feel like dancing, just start to dance, and it'll be you'll have to fight through something, but eventually you'll break through, and many devotees have experienced that. Utsaha Nischaya Dharya Nischaya. It means confidence. And Ayendra Prabhu was very confident. He would always say, if you're walking on a tightrope, you need to have your eyes on the goal. You need to have your eyes on the end. And then you can walk straight, and you can be confident, and you can be firm. He would always say, have faith, that, okay, you're a fallen Kali Yuga reject. Well, there's a process that's been ordained by Lord Chaitanya for the upliftment of the fallen Kali Yuga rejects. And, he would say, if old Ayendra Prabhu, old Ayendra Das can do it, then anyone can do it. We just have to apply ourselves to the process. So having the confidence that the process is actually going to work on us should give us the confidence. Rupa Goswami describes in Nectar of Devotion, Asha Bandha, is like this hope against hope. Even though devotees think they're so fallen, they see all these bad qualities and their bad history and everything, and the supreme superlative qualities that devotees of Krishna have and the servants of Krishna have, and that's what they want, but they're so far away from it. But they have a hope that Krishna is, so amazing, and devotional service is so amazing, and they're so attracted by it that they just keep on going with it. And so we should all have this Asha Bandha. And then Daryat, Utsaha Nishtaya Daryat. Daryat means patience. So Ayendra Prabhu also exhibited this quality of patience. He started the whole 24-hour kirtan by himself. He basically just went to Vrindavan with some idea of collecting paraphernalia to maybe fix up his bus or start some sort of program. And then he realized that there wasn't a 24-hour kirtan going on in Vrindavan, and just had his stuff and would just lay it out and just start a kirtan, and whoever would come through the temple room, he would just sit down in the beginning oh, I don't know how to play drum. It doesn't matter, just play it. And get everyone in. He would chant for hours and hours and hours a day. And another example of patience, I guess, is he would have hundreds and thousands of shalagram shilas and deities that he would worship every single day, and personally massage each one with some oil. And so that would take hours. and he wouldn't eat until he was done with that, and it would often, go very late into the night. And when he was painting and worshipping Giriraj before he gave Giriraj to Ram Roy Prabhu, he had Ram Roy Prabhu come on his schedule. And another thing he would often say is like, if someone would complain it was like too late or anything that he was doing was too heavy, he would just say, it's a small price to pay for love of God. So that's also another, we can be patient and we can be confident. We have to keep our eyes on the prize sometimes. We have to actually know what are we doing all this for? And then it'll actually make things make way more sense. And so I think sometimes that's lacking in devotees' sangha, and that's something that Ayendra Prabhu really brought to the table, was constantly reminding devotees that this, what our actually goal is. Tat tat karma pravartanat, following the different activities of devotional service. Well, Ayendra Prabhu definitely was one of the perfections of that. His life exemplified, Panchanga Bhakti. He was a Dhamvasi practically his whole life since 1984 or 86 when he moved into Vrindavan. He just stayed there. Bhagavat Shravan, he would give hours long Bhagavatam classes, and you could tell he was very studied, and devotees would come into his room. Nam Sankirtan, obviously he's just doing hours and hours a day and inspiring so many people to do Harinam, and he's Srimurti Seva, he was famous for his dressing of Radha Shamsundar, and of course his own Murti Seva in his room, Nitai Sachi Sutta and all the different shalagrams, and Sadhu Sangha. Like I was saying, devotees would go into his room, they would ask him one question, and from that one little question, you have recordings that are sometimes 2 or 3, 4 hours long, just keep going on different topics. And so that's, he was exemplary of Panchanga Bhakti, following the different prescribed activities. Sangha Tyagat, giving up dissociation. It's interesting that Rupa Goswami mentions this twice. Rupa Goswami is boiling all knowledge down into 11 verses, but there's some things that are interesting that he will mention that should stick out to us. He's mentioning Sangha twice, both the positive and the negative aspect. Just mentioning one would be sufficient, but he wants to, repetition is considered a fault in writing. So when a perfect writer puts something in repetition, you have to know that they didn't make a mistake repeating it. They wanted you to understand that they want you to take it seriously. So Rupa Goswami wants us to take this thing seriously of actually getting our association good. And so Ayendra Prabhu, I don't know how this, what he would do is he would put a lock on the outside of his door, but he would actually be inside there, so no one would bother him when he would chant his japa, and he would chant a lot. But then there was people that knew the secret way to open the lock or have a secret knock. And like I said, anyone who would come into his room, his clock, he took the hands out of the clock and just said, there's no time in this room. Anyone that comes into the room, he would see himself as living in the, sometimes people would criticize him for, well, why are you just staying in Vrindavan? Why don't you actually go out and preach? Well, he saw himself as doing something that Prabhupada wanted. Prabhupada wanted devotees to actually live in the Dham and preach from the Dham, living in the Dham for the benefit of others. Because there's many that go to the Dham just for the benefit of themselves, some Radhakund Babaji or something like that. They just want to leave the hardships of the West, and living in, especially if you're a little bit spiritual, living in India, it's a lot nicer. Even though it's materially not very nice, the spiritual vibes and the culture and everything just make things more easier. So a lot of people want to give up the hard life of preaching and go there. And so some people would accuse Ayendra Prabhu of that. But his actually living there was for the benefit of others, and no matter, even though he had such late nights coming back, worshiping his deities for hours and hours and chanting so many rounds, then if someone came into his room and asked a question, he would still give all his time and his energy to that person until they had to leave. he would just give his association like that. And so utsahanischaradaya tat karma pavartanat sangatyagat sato vrite sadvir bhakti prasidyati. So sato vrite, following in the path of the previous acharyas. So Ayana Prabhu was very fixed in Srila Prabhupada, and he was constantly trying to convince others that they didn't need to go elsewhere out of ISKCON to Radhakund to this place and that. Like there's this Babaji in Radhakund who wrote a bunch of books, and he would criticize, saying Prabhupada only taught you guys the very beginning, and now you need to come to me. I can teach you, Leela Smaranam and all this more advanced things. And Ayana Prabhu was like, no, that's completely bogus. You just don't have the eyes to see what Prabhupada wrote. Prabhupada put everything in his book. When he said he put everything in the first canto, he means he put everything. But not necessarily that a neophyte person can just read the first canto and see everything. But advanced devotees like Ayana Prabhu will show us how it's actually all there, and all you need, Prabhupada is given. Sometimes he's given in a seed format, but everything is actually still there. Bhakti prasidyati. So because his life was an emblem of all these qualities, then also at the time of death, it showed that he reached success in his devotional service, because it says, what you remember, Krishna says, yam smaram vapi kalavaram, what you remember at the end of life is what you get. And so what happened in the unfortunate, seemingly for us, because he was taken out of our association in the accident where he left his body. After he realized that he was going to leave his body, he went and he was found just holding the feet of his Gaurani Thai deities, just paying obeisance to them. So that was what he was thinking at the end of his life, was how he's a surrendered servant and completely dependent on Gaurani Thai. And so we can understand by that his devotional service was tested at the end of his life, and he had passed the test, because that's what ultimately everyone has to fly their own ship, and the time of death is the actual test of our bhajan, the test of our devotional service. So it's 8:50. I don't know if anyone wants to say anything else or have any questions or comments. Otherwise we can.
You were talking about when Andrew Prabhu first started 24-hour kirtan. I was reading the other night that he would work the night shift when he first started, and he would be the only one working it. And he would often ask like a random Babaji off the streets to like play Mridanga for him, and they wouldn't even know how to play. And he would just say, play any beat that you like.
Yeah, I said that. Yeah, like just grab anyone. The accountant was like, had a dream of Prabhupada, and Prabhupada said, why isn't there a 24-hour kirtan? And the accountant, like, hearing that from Prabhupada, became so like sad, he started crying, and they like just felt like he had to tell someone. So he went and told Ayana Prabhu, and Ayana Prabhu like felt his emotion, and Ayana Prabhu started crying. And then because of that, he felt that was an indication from Prabhupada that he should really start the 24-hour kirtan. Brajman, I saw you writing something down. You have a question or a comment?
There's like a lot of things I could say.
Just say something.
Well, I mean, on Andhra Prabhu, I guess we'll start with Govinda Ghosh. There's one pastime where Lord Chaitanya was dancing in Sankirtan. I was just getting started, and he was chanting, but then all of a sudden he stopped, and he said, it doesn't feel the same today, something's wrong. And then he looked around and he said, oh, where's Govinda? Govinda's not here to play Mridanga, because Govinda and Madhava, or Mukunda, I forget, would be his two primary Mridanga players. And they would play practically every kirtan. And so he looked around and he said, where's Govinda? He's not playing Mridanga, then I don't want to do Sankirtan. So he had to wait for Govinda to be called and brought to the place he was doing kirtan before Lord Chaitanya would dance. And I was just thinking about Ayendra Prabhu, how he's like such a perfect example of a Rasik Vaishnava. He's worshipping totally heart, very intimate mood. It's not all this, Aishwarya, and it's not fear-based. It's totally very, very intimate. Like, for example, he would offer whole fruits to Nitai Sachi Sutta as their offering. He would offer a whole mango, a whole banana on their plate. He wouldn't peel it and cut it, and that we usually do because we understand, you should do like that. But he had like such intimate worship. He would do things like that, or he would personally pick the Nitai Sachi Sutta up, which are big deities, every night, and he would lay them down in their bed physically, which you never do. With big deities.
Really, there's a bed? That'd be a big bed.
Yeah, behind, underneath the altar, or to the left of it, is like a space. So he'd do things like that, or so many, like I was listening last night, Bhagavatam Prabhu was walking by Andhra Prabhu's room, and there was a devotee, Nitai dāsa, who was a Bengali brahmachari. He was wearing saffron at the time. And Bhagavatam Prabhu was walking by, and Andhra Prabhu was very emotional. He was preaching to Nitai very passionately, and then he listened to him. What's he talking about? And Nitai said something about, we have to follow the Mahajans, and he quoted Mahajana Yena Gata Sapanta. We have to follow the Mahajans, and I just shows you Andhra Prabhu's inner consciousness, his mood. He said, we don't give a damn about the Mahajans. We want to follow the gopis. And Nitai was just like, well, yeah, I guess, that's all right. It just shows you his, his level of consciousness. So advanced. Most devotees, couldn't understand at that point. They thought it was just strange, or, he was like deviating. But actually, when you look at the result, he's even now doing so much preaching. Devotees are hearing his kirtans, they're hearing his lectures, and getting so much inspiration, but they may have never even physically met him. So, such a great example of internal understanding, deep understanding.
Gopal? Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam Giridhari Gopinath Vana Namohan. Alright, now we'll have Harinam from now until 7. That's the festival.
7 a.m.
7 p.m. tomorrow. Grantharaj, Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam Ki Jai. Shri Govinda Ghosh, Tirabha Motsu Ki Jai. Shri Pradanya Prabhu, Ayurbhav Mahotsav Ki Jai. Gaur Premanandi. Govinda Ghosh. Govinda Vasu.